All right, please join me in welcoming Dan O'Brien.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I said I only had one nice shirt, and this is my second best shirt, and I ironed it, so this should be exciting. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here again. I've said this a few summers now, but I couldn't be here in 2016 for health reasons, and didn't know if I'd ever be back. And now this is my third summer back. This is my 11th summer here since I was very young back there, much younger than I am now, but not that different looking than I do right now. Instead of explaining my thanks for Wyatt, I'm also going to read just these few paragraphs I wrote for the Sewanee Review about just what Sewanee means to me. It's called Home. In the winter of 2002, I was apartment hopping in New York City, and my previous illegal sublet called to say there'd been a message left on their answering machine for me from somebody named Wyatt Purdy. She wasn't sure. It was the thickest Southern accent she'd ever heard, she said. I was an aspiring playwright. 9/11 had pretty much obliterated my day job, or my night job, rather, fiddling with charts and graphs inside a palatial investment bank, and Wyatt was calling to offer me a year to write in Tennessee. I came to visit in the spring. I slept at Rebel's Rest and gave a reading the next day in Convocation Hall, an oak-paneled, almost Elizabethan room with stained glass and oil portraits of Episcopal educators. Am I mistaken in remembering suits of armor? If I am, it felt like a place to house such relics. Wyatt had a dentist appointment in Nashville, so he would drive me to the airport himself. And for the next 80 minutes, we shared reminiscences about Middlebury, Vermont, where I'd gone to college and where Wyatt had taught at Breadloaf. He discussed Andrew Lytle, Alan Tate, and the Agrarians, and I pretended to understand. I said something pretentious about writing and vagabonding being synonymous, and I wondered if Wyatt was gently reproving me by remarking that many writers find their truest art by quarrying deep in their place of origin, or their adopted home if they must. I drove down for the Advent semester, a new term for me, and owing to an infamously sneaky time zone shift via Chattanooga, showed up at Wyatt's door exactly 1 hour early. He did not let on. I wouldn't realize my faux pas for weeks, but he welcomed me and my girlfriend Jessica, handing us cocktails and settling us down for a civilized chat with his gracious wife Barbara on their back porch above the sunsetting plateau, while hikers intermittently strode along the perimeter trail at the bottom of their yard. Time was slowing down. I'm embarrassed to describe Wyatt in fatherly terms, but honesty requires it. I don't have much of a father or a mother or a family. Not long after my first visit to Sewanee, my parents disowned me for mysterious reasons, but probably because I was a young writer liable to write about the mystery of their cruelty. Many nights that first year, I'd pass Wyatt's house on my walk home from campus, and the dark gully of Clara's Point Road was spooky. For some reason, I never carried a flashlight, but what was haunting me most was my sense of abandonment, of rootlessness. And as I climbed the road, the light from his house through the trees would reassure me somehow, because I imagined Wyatt inside silently and solidly writing, like I was writing and hoped to go on writing, though I was then just finding my way. In 2015, when my wife was diagnosed with cancer, and 6 months later I was too, I had to bow out of what would have been my 9th summer teaching at the conference. Cards, letters, emails, phone calls, even new poems arrived from my Sewanee family. Pictures posted on social media during the conference at the nadir of my chemotherapy filled me with an almost jealous grief. I knew I would likely never see these people or Sewanee again. When the following summer, dazed and disbelieving, I was able to return to the mountain cancer-free, my wife also, I found that Wyatt had chosen a quote from a play of mine for the conference t-shirt. "Now go write us out of this mess." Whether he intended it or not, I got the message. It's hard to believe he's retiring. Surely he's not old enough. He still possesses that leading man quality, those swimmer's shoulders, his affectionate wit and courtly modesty. He still flies a plane. His poetry is rich and rooted, but he has accomplished more than poetry. He has provided for 30 years now the time and space, a place in time where writers can find a home. So thank you, Wyatt. And Barbara. I don't know if we've ever discussed how I showed up an hour early, and I'm probably not the first or the last to have done that. Before I read this, it's a monologue from a new play, so it's just going to be me, and I feel guilty about that because we have such great actors here, but I didn't want to do that to one of the actors and force them to try to make this make sense. But I'm going to try to make it make sense. It's a new play. Oh, and before I get into it, I also want to thank Megan and Adam, the entire staff who I've got to know, all of them, so many of them over the years. Beth Blicker's my agent, who's here. Where are you, Beth? Beth? Maybe she's not here. Oh, okay. Boo. No, she's here. She's actually here. My one and only since the late 90s we've been together. Tennessee Williams. I mean, some people have thanked him, but I mean, just the fact that this exists because his grandfather was in seminary here, and his grandfather was the one family member who accepted him and loved him, and the fact that he thought of himself as a writer, not just a playwright, that he wrote everything, and that's what I love about this conference, and what I hope in some ways to do myself. And I want to thank Liliana, who's in the back of the room, my co-workshop leader, and our playwrights and our actors. And I want to wish Leah Stewart and Gwen Kirby, just all the best for another 30 years. No pressure. Just let's make that work. So this is a play. For the first time in years, I'm not reading like a memoir play or something, so it's not about me. It's a play that was commissioned maybe 7 years ago to be a play by Oregon Shakespeare Festival in the American Revolution cycle. They commissioned new plays about history, and it was meant to be, they said they wanted a play about the history of guns in America. Which, I had that response of, oh. And of course, I was very interested and fascinated by that, but also completely intimidated by that. And at the time, the story I really wanted to write about was something that at that time was very recent, which was the Sandy Hook shooting. And for a while, I think I felt like, is this history yet? And then I got cancer, and years passed, and I started to feel like it is history. And then, of course, it fits into a very long history of violence in this culture. So I finally got back to it, and this is the first act of the play. It's out in the new Cincinnati Review. The thing that comes the piece of writing comes right after it is Adam Latham's story that he read much of. Was that today or last week, or when was that? That was. So I'm going to just read this, and it's called Adam's Mother, the first act. The whole play right now is called Newtown. And the speaker is Nancy Lanza speaking to her son the morning of December 14th, 2012. Adam, why won't you speak? You're dwindling away to nothing. You don't eat, you sleep half the day. At least I think you're sleeping in your room. What else could you be doing in there? You tell me, on your computer, I suppose, playing games that teach you things like how to insert a new magazine before the first magazine is empty by ejecting with the hand that's holding the Glock 20 G3 or what have you, while simultaneously preparing with your free hand the fully loaded mag before insertion, click, click. Now that skill, which you may or may not know, is known as the tactical reload, is exactly the sort of thing a Green Beret or cop knows how to do. My brother, your uncle, he could teach you. And I approve of that skill, learning it, but I cannot condone violence, as you know. All this easy talk of death, how you exclaim, I died, I'm dead, and then just press a button and begin again. It's a fantasy. Remember how you used to like the theater? Rehearsing your expressions in front of the mirror for hours on end. You were sociable once, in your way. What happened? I know you hate sunlight on your skin. It burns and itches and makes your eyes ache. So I tape trash bags over all your windows. I am nothing if not accommodating, submitting to your every whim. I try not to touch doorknobs, don't wear high heels, and never lean against anything because you've told me you find it improper for some reason. There's something of the Puritan in you, isn't there, Adam? Even me homeschooling you was in order to protect you, your mind, but you act as if you don't need any help. You like to claim you taught yourself chemistry, but I know your father did, and you have to admit you learned a few things from me. History is my métier, as you know. Why life happens as it does, what circumstances bring us to this time and place, how to change circumstances in order to avoid their repetition, if we can. Now, when I was your age, I wanted to grow up to be Joan Didion or somebody equally thin, this kind of chain-smoking intellectual, but circumstances changed, and here we are. Can you tell me how this has occurred? What has brought us to this time and place? Because you used to go out when you were young. You used to like hiking with your father through the mountain forests of New England. You used to enjoy going to Red Sox games with me. Now, most children would be overjoyed to have a mother who's a rabid baseball fan, but not you anymore, apparently. We could go shooting. How about that? You love shooting with me at the gun range. Just say the word and we'll go this morning. We can dust off the old 45 or your 22 caliber Savage Mark II rifle or my Glock 20 or your 6 Sauer, or we could shoot through some ammo with our new AR-15 semi-automatic 223 caliber Bushmaster XM15. I mean, you're certified, aren't you? Why go through the rigmarole of those NRA classes if you won't go shooting anymore? Remember how good it feels to hold a gun? So heavy and cold till you tickle the trigger and pop like a pulse. Wouldn't you like to feel alive again? Not cooped up inside here with your sick mother. Now, I won't tell you what's wrong with me. I won't do that to you. But as you know, it is a disorder affecting my movements. I won't tell you the gory details, but it's genetic. I carry in my blood the DNA of our family disease. It's a matter of time. They tell me, I'm sorry. I hope you'll be spared, Adam. We should test your blood when you're ready. And still, I go outside when I am able. And do you know why? I need to survive. I need to stay here in the world of the living in order to teach you how to live when I am gone. And every teacher knows that in order to thrive, a student must discover what they love. And from an early age, you loved guns. The first gun I bought you was an aluminum alloy Ruger 1022. You were 4, and your face lights up. Miraculously, a presence arrives in your eyes as you're focusing on the target at the end of the range, underground or across a field. Your aim is impeccable. You feel confident, don't you? When you shoot, take our guns and go there yourself today. You're old enough now to go there by yourself. You're 21 soon. That's old enough. You're old enough, too, to answer me when I ask you something. Wouldn't you say? Blink your eyes once for yes and twice for buzz off. How long has it been? I've lost track. It's fine with me if this not talking is like a protest or something, but I don't know what it is. You think you're protesting. You are here now, and I appreciate that. You could stand right up and walk right out of this room and back into your room and shut the door. So thanks for listening. Because those emails we send back and forth, they're fine. They tell us what we think we need to know, what you want differently for dinner, which food texture you can't stomach anymore. You're upset about the suffering of animals, and you write me an email asking if you can become a vegan, and I type, absolutely, I'll be a vegan too because of you. Now, many famous people have been vegan or vegetarian throughout history, like Adolf Hitler, for example. Where was I? Oh, emails are not enough, though, because computers are by definition inhuman, and I need to know what's happening inside your mind, your brain, because there are a lot of mysteries in there, aren't there? Like, why must you always wear black? You tell me I'm superstitious, but the color black reflects something. An interior sadness, like hopelessness, if it is hopelessness you're feeling and not something worse. Let's go shopping, you and I'll cut the tags out of your new clothes, or we'll have them made downtown like we used to, and cut in greens and blues. What do you say? Think about it. And get back to me. Shoot me an email. The battery in your car is dead, by the way. I checked. It's a shame we bought you that car, considering how you never drive it. You can borrow mine. In the meanwhile, the keys are over there by the door where they always are. You're free to go wherever, whenever. You're not a prisoner here, you know. The divorce could be the reason that you're protesting something with your silence, because divorce is painful. But you were, 17? At the time, of course, you are younger when the disruption of the separation begins. You are 12 and discovering how to become a man when your father leaves us. And heaven knows how much that upsets you, upsets your mind, your brain development, like skills having to do with socialization, for example, like dating girls. And I apologize for what you had to go through, for my part in what you've gone through. But it's not easy growing up in a family with parents who stay together when they ought to be divorced. Believe me. I mean, my father had secrets. He was an airline pilot who was keeping a whole other family in Cincinnati, where my half-sister still lives, and she seems like a nice person I'd like to meet one day. We connected via the computer. I have questions, of course. Many questions. I'd like to know what my mother knew and when she knew it, for example. But who knows? Nobody's talking now, and there were other things wrong in my family. You'll never know how bad it was for me. But you've heard all of this before. The point is, your brother grew up normal in spite of the divorce. I know you don't check in with your brother these days, and that's a shame, because you used to be such good friends. You wanted to be him. Copied his haircut. You planned to go to college like him and have friends also and girlfriends. Why don't you go visit him in the city? I'll give you some money, and you can take my car, or we'll fix yours. Just say the word. And you should know, Adam, how long we waited, your father and I, before we divorced. How we pretended we were happy, normal, all the acting we had to do in front of you. A child is like a mirror, though, especially a child like you. We argued in whispers till we simply stopped talking and started waiting. For what? A death, I suppose, and that's a real shame. And of course, we argued more because of you, your challenges. You know I cannot lie to you. It's true, a child strains a marriage, especially a child like you. But you and I have got to learn how to live and how to forgive, because you don't ever forget things. Things happen and you cling to them. You dwell. You believe you're punishing others when you're really hurting yourself. For example, you hate talking to your father, but I like to talk to him. Still, I have to talk to him from time to time because of you, planning for your future. We are younger than you when we fall in love. A few years later, we marry. Beanie and mousy. Beanie, owing to my trademark hat, and mousy because your father is shy. Those first years in the house we built on my father's land up north, where your brother's born and you're born, we're happy. We're normal. But I'm young and I want more. I want lacrosse and cars with Ivy League stickers and commuter trains to the city. Essentially, I want Connecticut. So we pack up and move to this town, Newtown, where Main Street crosses Churchill Road with American flags flapping in the graveyard. But circumstances change and we must learn how to survive. Without your father, we'd be homeless. Well, God knows where we'd be. Because of him, I can stay home with you because you need me to. True, your father has found himself a new wife, and that's a challenge, a librarian. He's always liked the brainy types, which is to his credit, and I'm happy for them. I am. At my age, it's impossible to find a man who's got time, but who knows, maybe one day. You should really answer your father's emails, though. Or visit him. He's hardly an hour away. You could walk right up to his door and knock and just say, "Surprise!" I know he can be difficult to talk to. Your brother's mostly like me with his sociability and his drive, but your father, you are overly shy, sensitive. His sensitivity was one of many challenges, that and his workaholism. He complains I'm too tightly wound and a drama queen and tend to run my mouth, and I reply, if you ever opened your mouth, maybe I could shut mine. I'm talking because I have to, because somebody has to. Now, of course, we mustn't confuse the ability to impersonate a person with being an actual human being. Your father can chit-chat at a party when he has to, but once you get him home, he's saying some of the coldest, nastiest, most judgmental things about people. I remember one time I challenged him, can you say something nice about anybody? And somebody you know well, not a colleague or client. And he thinks about this for a minute before saying, well, President Reagan was good at his job. I mean, can you imagine? He's never had friends or hobbies. He's the single loneliest person I know. But he has succeeded in his career. He's moved on in his life, and so should you if your father is why you're so mad. And I know you are, because I feel what you feel. Even when you can't feel what you feel, there's nothing you could say that would scare me away. Like those mothers of heinous criminals like murderers or worse, and how they still love their children no matter what. I used to wonder, how can they say such a thing after their child has murdered somebody or done something worse? And while you know how much I detest violence of any kind, I'd forgive you, Adam. I would. Somehow. Is there something you need to tell me? I know you're a man now. As I've said, it's only natural you'd feel desire. Now, maybe you don't know what to do with that desire or don't know what your desire is. I went to college, and I think we make too big a deal of whether or not you're whatever from birth or because of a bad experience when you ought to be able to just choose what you are. I don't care. I have desires like everybody else, and I see you squirming there, mister, but even I have wants and needs that are inappropriate to share with you. And yet I must ask, and it's hard for me to do this, but do you like children? Adam? I can imagine how you'd want to conceal such a desire from me. And the world, how you'd want to starve it right out of your body. I have read on your computer. Now, hold on, sit down, please. I've been going into your bedroom each night. You've been sneaking out of the house, and I'm not asking where you've been going yet. I was in your room not long ago with the black trash bags on all the windows and everything clean and sanitized like you don't live there, like nobody lives there, and your computer had been left on, and call me crazy, but it's almost as if you were hoping I'd find what I found. Well, were you hoping I would find what I found, Adam? because you're talking to a girl or typing to a girl, or so she claims she's a female. I detest pedophiles, you say, you write, which I am glad to hear. And yet there are certain circumstances in which a sexual relationship between an adult and a young person could be, how do you put it, mutually beneficial. You say, you write. Tell me, what in the world could you possibly mean? Adults are gods, adults control children, but children make choices, children desire, you say, you write. Have you ever been touched, Adam, as a boy? By whom? A teacher? An older boy? Your brother? Your father? Don't answer that. You have to answer if the answer's yes. I'm afraid to ask this, but have you ever touched a child? Because we need to know what we're dealing with here if we're going to figure out what to do about it. We could learn to live with it or without it, because there are people who are attracted only to people who are dead, for example, who fall in love with goats. You don't believe in therapy, and I have my doubts too. I think it's mainly a scam and a way for people to blame things on their mothers. But there has to be something we can do if we have to. Adam, do we have to? Adam? You tell me. You open your mouth and answer me. You know that it is wrong, don't you? It's something you can never know, you can never do as long as you're alive. Touching a child in the manner in which you have described or alluded to in your own words on your own computer, well, these children grow into adults who spend the rest of their lives trying to forget what has happened to them by using drugs and alcohol and having challenges with intimacy till their marriages fall apart, or they end up committing suicide, which is why I have said some things are worse than murder. What happened to them turns them against themselves, and it can take a lifetime. We have to deny ourselves the pleasure of feeling sorry about ourselves. For example, I will not talk about what happened to me on that day on the Boston Common. You know all this already, but you don't know everything because I haven't told you. I'd shot guns with my brother, your uncle, out hunting through the mountain forests of New England with my .22. I could dress a deer before I'd kissed a boy. I was not armed that morning on the Boston Common when people were walking on by. Broad daylight, and people can see what is happening, and they do nothing. For years, I'm afraid to go outside to date boys. My schoolwork suffers. My brother teaches me some moves from his Green Beret and cop training days that even somebody my size could use. And though I've never had cause to use them, I'm sure they're effective. Oh, how I miss having my brother, your uncle, near me. Nobody messes with you when they know your brother's police. Maybe what happened to me would help explain why I own 11 knives, a bayonet, and 3 samurai swords. Not to mention the guns. If I'd had a gun that morning on the Boston Common, then things would be different today. The reason I don't like talking about certain things is because talking about faraway things in time and place, the historical incidents, if you will, makes them happen again, in a way. Adam, do you see what I'm saying? We owe it to ourselves to repress certain things. If I'm correct about what I read on your computer and the photographs and the video on your, what do you call it, your hard drive, though I didn't look, I don't need to know everything. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you're mad. I'm even asking, and that's why you won't answer. Are you? Are you angry at me? At me? And what for? I've done everything I can because parental bonds form so early in life. They're either there or they're not. A child learns to sink or swim in direct proportion to how much work and passion his parents have put into helping him. You're in kindergarten when you were first diagnosed. You asked me then, but why do we need friends? You were 13 when they diagnosed you again, a new diagnosis because apparently they'd been mistaken. And this time around, it's good news. We know what's wrong. Again, well, not wrong per se, but practically speaking, we can learn to live in spite of what's wrong with you or because of it. Remember how I said throughout history, many famous people were vegetarian or vegan? Well, the same is doubly true of people like you who aren't normal, who don't see their lives and circumstances normally. And that is exactly why, with the right education, these people often end up in the most rewarding careers with like-minded friends, beautiful wives. Now, I know it has not been easy for you, for us. We have had to accept some things. You have had to give up your dream of becoming a Green Beret or cop like my brother, your uncle, and that's fine. Life's got something else planned for you. I mean, how can you be a Green Beret or a cop if you can't let anybody touch you? And I've had to let go of my dream of a family, a normal family. I mean, I've never given up on you, though, obviously, which is why after that second diagnosis, I give you the medication they prescribe, even though it's making you feel dizzy and disoriented till you're speaking in tongues, sweat down your face, your brain's dying, you tell me. And you look it, too, not unlike how you're looking at me now, though we stop with the drugs. And maybe that's a mistake in retrospect. Do you remember those pictures you drew? You never knew I knew about them, did you? Of an old woman clutching her rosary beads as bullets ripped through her spine, and a mountain meadow littered with children, and a self-portrait of yourself with a hole in your forehead gushing blood and your arms outstretched toward the sky. For what? God? And some photographs from the internet of a man in black pointing his rifle at a man kneeling in a mountain forest clearing circled by bodies. But the one that haunts me most is a naked woman wrapped in plastic like a cocoon. Her hands are tied behind her back, and there's lipstick smeared all over her face like she's laughing. It makes me shiver to remember it now, but at the time, I kept my mouth shut. I don't know why. Why didn't I ask you? I'll tell you. Because I respect your privacy, but also I'm afraid. Afraid you'll shut me out like you shut your father and brother out. You would stop even listening. You'd be lost forever. But I have to ask because last night when you sneaked out and I slipped into your room again and found your, spreadsheet of, what should we call them, shooters. This long list of I don't know how many incidents in tiny font on paper 7 feet long and 4 feet wide, the size of a man, a monstrous man. I mean, how did you even find paper that size? Where did you print it? Never mind, because last night I find it in your wardrobe and pull it out and unfold it and sit down and just start reading. Every mass shooting in American history and a few elsewhere like Norway. A historian would be impressed with the names of killers and the numbers killed, like you're keeping score for one of your games. The make and model of the guns used, it must have taken you months or longer. And I know why, Adam. It's okay. I know why you would compile this disgusting document. You're afraid you're turning into them, these men, against your will, like when you're 7 and you're scared of the devil, of becoming possessed by the devil, which was hilarious because it's not like we ever even went to church, but you've always been afraid of infestation, as with germs, afraid of becoming something and somebody you are not, which is where the pedophilia comes in. It's circular. The more we fear, the more our fear becomes real, but it's not real, Adam. Believe me, you are nothing like those killers. Look me in the eye. This is not you. Like, what was our most recent mass shooting because there have been so many these last few years. It's hard to keep track of time and place. We have grown accustomed to shootings that are really just a symptom of the disease anyway. This disease of indolence and resentment, a lack of something like self-sufficiency and ultimately love. Ours is an illness of absence that is taking our children from us one by one, like that murderer in the one-room schoolhouse. He was afraid he was turning into a pedophile. He writes in a note, he's angry at God because his newborn daughter dies as soon as she's been born. Well, shoot yourself then. In my opinion, if you're so mad, and for good reason, why not be a man and shoot yourself? Well, he does shoot himself. At first, he storms that one-room schoolhouse with his Springfield XD 9mm and orders the boys to bring in some tools from his truck. A piece of wood with metal eye hooks, some chains, a shotgun and stun gun. Apparently, he brings a lubricant for God knows what. He sets the teachers free with the boys, who scatter into the wheat and tobacco fields exploding with crows. He ties up all the girls. He barricades the windows and doors with lumber, but then the police start breaking in. So he shoots 8 girls, one by one, execution style, before blowing his brains out. Afterward, an old Amish farmer says, "Do not judge this man. He has a wife and a mother. He stands before God now." I don't know how he could say such a thing. But the families of the murdered girls forgave the gunman, and they forgave his family too, because the families of the gunman are shattered as well, blamed and ostracized. They have to change their names and disappear, denying who they are, their blood. Can you imagine living with such a secret? These gunmen might as well murder their own families too, because essentially they'll all be dead afterward, but worse because they're living with the guilt, wondering, am I to blame somehow? How could I have stopped this? Take that college student in Virginia who kills, I think, 33, the largest number in U.S. history, if you include himself, because of course he shoots himself when he's done. And this kid isn't even American, for the record. He grows up somewhere in Korea, and this college should have known better. They failed to protect their children. I mean, why do we protect banks and airports and senators, but not our own children? Out of some nostalgia for schools as utopias unsullied by the presence of firearms. Who are we kidding? I live in a world where our children matter. And this sick boy was doing sick things like writing stories about gunmen, circulating selfies of himself with handguns like he's starring in an action movie. I want to smack his shiny, fat face because nobody was disciplining him, which is shocking in an Asian family. They were in shock afterward, that's for sure. They've had to go into hiding. Every one of his guns, by the way, his Walter P22 and his Glock 19, were bought legally with background checks, which only proves gun laws are a fantasy. Of course, we mustn't worship guns, that's true, romanticizing their power. Guns don't cure violence. The cure is the cause, where it comes from. This desire to kill innocence. What circumstances must coalesce to create not only the commission, but the repetition of an atrocity? Take those young men in Columbine. Everybody's aware of Columbine, which is why I prefer we remember the flower. Nobody remembers the Columbine wildflower anymore, cerulean, shimmering in mountain meadows that die in the fall and come back in the spring like most flowers. The name Columbine derives from the Latin columba, meaning dove, because of the shape of the delicate petals, which is ironic. Those sick boys obliterated those flowers because they were abused themselves. They understood the value of violence because gunmen, and I haven't done the research myself, but I'm willing to bet that the killers in almost every unspeakable act in your never-ending spreadsheet of death were beaten, shunned, scorned, emasculated if they're a man, and let's be frank, they are almost always men, boys, who live alone with their shame, who want to make others feel what they're feeling. And in this way, violence is not unlike love. You were bullied too, like those boys, before I decided to keep you home with me because you are shy and don't fight back. You're an easy target. And watching your body, one day I see bruises and I get angry. But that school does nothing. Schools are like the government, in my opinion, and they pursue and maintain at all costs their own corrupt power. And when I am feeling powerless, when there's tension at work, when I worked, or when I'm interacting with neighbors or lawyers or your father, I remember the feeling of a gun in my hand, cold and heavy in my mind. I let my breath escape slowly, and I know within myself I am safe. Unlike at least one of those Columbine shooters who was bullied by his classmates, and the other shooter too, who was psychotic, in my opinion, pulling the weaker mind deeper into his orbit. Many people will tell you this other one, the psychotic one, was evil, but I don't know. What do you think about evil, Adam? I don't know what evil rightly is, but I do believe in history. Now, you'll also notice I won't name the shooters. They want their fame or infamy. Why can't we remember the dead instead? Their names like the flowers in a mountain meadow, dead in the fall and back in the spring. Maybe it's something in the blood after all. Our ancestors were Puritans. It's 1740 when my childhood home's built. The champions from Cornwall in England. I'm a daughter of the American Revolution, so that makes you a grandson. Now, not everybody on the Mayflower is a Puritan. They're known as strangers, and they come to the New World not for God, but for business, pelts. Can you imagine the boundless terror of abandoning the home where you've been born and enduring the almost unendurable passage down in the depths, swinging in your hammock and wherever you can contort yourself around furniture and barrels and crates with the odd lamb or goat or pig for warmth, all pressed together and stowed in the stench of piss and shit and vomit and the wail of suffocating babies? Can't you feel the plop from the boat down into the waves at low tide, half a mile out, now 2 steps toward shore in the sucking mud, 1 step back again in the undertow, toward and away, alive and rejoicing before a wilderness howling and hostile, free from oppression, redeemed by solitude, an absolute church unto ourselves. Because a couple of years later, this stranger named John Billington loses his temper with a Puritan and blows him away with a blunderbuss, one of those old guns that look ridiculous. An argument over grazing rights. Why are you smiling, Adam? Is this something I've said? Tell me what I'm not seeing. Because I have looked everywhere at everything like causes and circumstances, and still I cannot understand you. Let me take this feeling from you. Like that time when you were a boy and you had a fever and you refused to let me sleep beside you, so I sleep outside your door on the floor. You call out for me in the night, "Are you still out there, Mom? Mom?" I'm still here, Adam. I'm still here, but I won't be here forever because I'm tired. I've been up all night rehearsing what I would say to you. I would like to place my hands on either side of your face and shake you. I'd like to force you to speak. I want to kiss you, to hold you like I did long ago. I long to feel your body in my bed like you used to sleep with me, your breath, your small feet. What else can I do? I've disappeared. I'm a ghost like you. I know you walked by your old school last night. You've been walking by your old school many nights, haven't you? I know. Because a few nights ago I followed you and I watched you walking around the playground, staring in through the glass as if trying to figure something out. What is your plan, Adam? Do you want to hurt them because you love them too much? Give me an answer, or we'll have to go to the hospital this morning. Not a hospital, a home is what it's called. I picked one out. I'll go there with you. I'll take you and stay with you at first, but I'd rather not give up on you, Adam, on us. So tell me. This is like a nightmare I had, or was it a premonition months ago? You and I had gone outside into this mountain meadow. You're laughing and talking to me like you used to, till some clouds come rolling in, then a gust of wind lifts you off the ground just an inch or two, then higher. I reach out for your sneakers to pull you back, but the harder I pull, the harder the wind knocks me around till my eyes are stinging and I can barely see you. I'm losing you. The wind's tearing you away from me, and I'm watching you disappear into the lightning and rain, and you're not crying. I know you can't bear to be touched, but I'm going to touch you now, okay? Every mother would give her life to save her child's life. Here is mine for you. If that's what you need, if you're so angry at me because I've failed you, take my life, Adam. I'm not afraid. I'll be sleeping in my room. And when I wake up, we'll know what to do. She climbs the stairs. He gets up. There's an actual actor there the whole time. He gets up, goes downstairs. He returns moments later with a rifle and climbs the stairs to her room. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you.